Dear participants, dear experts, it's my great pleasure to open this webinar on ethical dimensions of education technologies today, which is organized by UNESCO Institute for Information Technologies in Education. First of all, on behalf of UNESCO Institute for Information Technologies in Education, I am glad to welcome you at our webinar. And I'm glad to say that our institute has been working in the field of information technologies in education for more than 20 years already. And we are working at different levels and forms of education. And speaking about today's topic, we are living in the digital world, and digital technologies and artificial intelligence have become a part of our daily lives. Technologies are the driving force of education. It has enormous potential for social good and can contribute to achieving the sustainable development goals. But the use of digital technologies and artificial intelligence also carries risks. In several instances, digital technologies have raised ethical concerns because they may contribute to widening gender gaps, impact on people's privacy, or facilitate manipulation of media content. Ethics in digital education means making sure that our interaction with digital systems and digital technologies, including AI, is not harmful, but contributes to peace, human dignity, sustainability, and security. Since all countries are facing these issues, and at the time, almost all digital technologies and AI are deployed on a global scale, we need a cross-border perspective on the ethical dimension and use of technologies. United Nations agencies pay much attention to ethical dimensions of ICT use and are trying to support its member states with recommendations and guidelines. For example, in November 2021, almost all UNESCO member states adopted the first global agreement on human-centric AI, the recommendation on the ethics of AI. And our today's webinar aims to provide some insights and expertise into the ethical dimensions of digital and AI-driven education. Today, we are going to discuss such topics as ethics of digital and online learning, ethics of artificial intelligence in education, understanding digital divide and bridging the digital gender divide, ethics and inclusion, ethical dimension to digital competence in teacher training, and also we are going to share with you existing ethical standards, recommendations, and guidelines. I'm happy to say that today we are lucky to have top experts from various international organizations leading in promoting sustainable and secure e-learning, and will share with you today their insights and experience on overcoming the risks related to ethics in digital education. And it's my great pleasure to introduce to you our first keynote speaker, Dr. Cecilia Baranauskas. She is a professor of the State University of Campinas from Brazil. Also, Dr. Cecilia Baranauskas is a member of UNESCO IITE Governing Board. Cecilia, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Natalia, for the introduction. I will share my PPT slides. Are you seeing it?
Yes, We can see it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, good morning and good afternoon to everyone attending this webinar. Thank you, organizers, for the invitation to this talk and for introducing me, Natalia. I will look at the subject from the AGCI human-computer interaction perspective. So, the words artificial intelligence are now spread out in the speech of people in everyday societal life, the media, movies, imagination, meaning different things to different people. Sometimes it is so ubiquitous that we hardly notice it. For example, when our camera is optimizing a shot for a photo, sometimes we listen to scary stories about AI taking control in everyday life. For example, when some decisions made by systems prevent us from getting an important loan from the bank. In summary, myths and misconceptions abound, making its use very complicated, very complex. So that is why I chose to bring you this agenda. I'm going to address what is AI from its origins, to understand why are we talking about AI in the first place, then AI in education and some main ethical issues. Finally, a bit on the ethics of AI through summarized principles and recommendations towards a socially responsible use of AI in learning environments. There is not a simple answer for what AI is. Florida and Caus, in a recent publication, wisely say that it is a research area still in search of a definition. Nevertheless, we could say that it involves the design of computer systems that present some reasoning based on different paradigms. For instance, logic, knowledge, probabilistic methods, machine learning, embodied intelligence, etc. Examples of such systems include expert systems, such as those classical systems that help to inform medical diagnosis, autonomous systems. Who have never heard about the autonomous car project? And ambient systems, composed by sensors and actuators spread out in the environment. AI was born from the shared vision of these gentlemen, McCarthy, Minsky, Shannon, and Rochester, mathematicians and engineers, who in 1955 wrote a proposal for the Dartmouth Summer Research Project to discuss the subject. They conjectured that every aspect of learning or any other feature of intelligence could in principle be so precisely described that a machine could be made to simulate it. Then, 50 years after the Dartmouth Conference, another conference was organized to discuss the first 50 years and prospect the future of the field. This conference had the participation of some of the attendees of the first one, among them Minsky, Solomonov, and Turkle. I choose those for you now, today. Minsky expressed his concerns regarding the publication of only successful cases. For him, to consider a science, the failures should have visibility and attention as much as the successes. Solomonov brought his concerns about something our society, unfortunately, is already experiencing: the political use and sometimes misuse of the disruptive technologies of AI. Sherry Turkle, a prominent sociologist working on social studies of science and technology, expressed that her concerns were less about the capabilities of computers than about our own vulnerabilities when confronted with very sophisticated artificial intelligences. When it comes to education, a decade after the founding of AI as a discipline, the beginning of AIED is amplified by the scholar system, a tutor system to teach South American Geography, introduced by Carbonell in 1970. It had an explicit representation of knowledge through semantic networks. It could reason about its knowledge to draw conclusions not explicitly coded, and could answer questions about what it knew. Scholar was very important because it inaugurated a conceptual architecture for learning facing AIED systems, which are constituted by an explicit model of what is to be taught, the knowledge, how it should be taught, the teaching strategy, an evolving model of learner skill, and a simple interface just for communication. The contemporary ethical issues around the use of AIED were not so much in evidence in the beginning, as put by Duboulay, one of the pioneers in the field. Differently, main recent fears involve the learner's data collected and potentially misappropriated, AI's potential to introduce extra biases into educational decisions and increase inequity, and an imbalance between the decision-making we retain ourselves and that we delegate to artificial agents, our autonomy. A few examples regarding the control over the data. Williamson recently warned about big tech companies moving into the field of education, typically with learner-facing tools, so that they could collect the learner's data for commercial purposes. How can we ensure that learners have more control over the data that is generated when they interact with those systems? How to protect ourselves from the misuse of data by others? These are questions we need to answer all the time. Regarding administration-facing systems issues, another reference, ACCAR and the K, reported about a study in which machine learning techniques were used to generate a predictive model of whether students would be admitted to the university based on their performance in physical ability tests, scores in a national examination, and grade at high school. The analyses were made retrospectively and with a very good accuracy. The ethical dimension of such predictions comes into attention if such predictions are made prospectively with actual decisions with no human in the loop, as pointed out by Duboulay. To face these issues, various codes of ethics have been developed that cover aspects of the design and deployment of AI-based technology at both international and local levels. Florida and Caos in 2019 conducted an analysis, a very interesting analysis of several sets of ethical principles for AI. As a result, they compiled 5 core principles for ethical AI, of which 4 are inspired by bioethics. They named beneficence, non-maleficence, autonomy, and justice. To this, they added a 5th they named explicability, which refers to our right to know how the system works and who is responsible for the way it works. Unfortunately, I don't have time to get into details, but I made a quick exercise in mapping the UNESCO's 2023 recommendations for ethical AI into Florida and Caos framework, which you can see in this slide. The graphical representation shows the proportion of UNESCO's recommendations in each principal area, and the distribution suggests the great effort of UNESCO's work on the explicability principle, with recommendations regarding transparency and explainability, 5 indications in the document, and responsibility and accountability, 2 indications with recommendations in the document. Moreover, awareness and literacy present two indications and could be, in my vision, an addition to the original framework as a sixth dimension of learnability, maybe. The graphical representation also shows areas in which we presuppose compliance, which explains a smaller number of recommendations, such as in beneficence area. Resuming, despite the differences in the technical sophistication since the beginning in 1956, what still unites the field seems to be the common vision that computers can do intelligent tasks, although not addressing the concept of intelligence itself. By the way, this view is also acknowledged in UNESCO's document on the ethics of AI. And to conclude, if we want to build a socially responsible use of AI in learning environments, in my view, we should understand the systems situated, the system and the use of the systems, the learning environments, situated within a formal layer of ethical principles and recommendations, which in turn must be situated within an informal layer of a social group in its cultures, beliefs, and commitments. This means involving stakeholders and ordinary people included in the loop and being aware of failures and our vulnerabilities when faced with sophisticated systems, as well as the successes. This means also that I'm suggesting instead of putting people within a digitally generated world, create technology that lives outside here, outside in the world of people. Thank you very much for your attention. I have references for you if you want. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Professor Baranauskas. It was a great presentation, and thank you for sharing with us some historical excursus and principles and recommendations of AI integration into education. All of it should be taken into consideration while planning of educational strategies and its following implementation. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. And now it's my great pleasure to invite our next keynote speaker, Dr. Shitanshu Mishra, who is the Chief of Digital Learning, AI and ICT from UNESCO Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Education for Peace and Sustainable Development. Shitanshu, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Natalia. Thank you, everyone. Is my screen visible?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so to start with, I would like to thank IITE and all organizers to invite me here. Hello, everyone. My name is Shitanshu. I work for UNESCO MGIEP, similar to IITE. MGIEP is also a Category 1 institute of UNESCO working on education for peace and sustainable development. I happen to be the Chief of Digital Learning AI and responsible for AIED and ethics of AIED research at the institute. Yeah, so as I said, MGIEP is happen to be working on innovations in education towards SDG 4.7. More specifically, education for peace and sustainable development. One of our recent reports, which we call ISEE-IC report, International Science and Evidence Based Education Assessment Report, it has identified human flourishing as the main aspiration of education. The same report emphasized on personalized learning, the importance of personalized learning, and the importance of digital technologies and AI for enabling personalized learning. So we all, almost all of us, we agree that AI is inevitable. Many of us also agree that AI is opportunity. And a large subset of all of us also agree that AI is threat. So what we are doing here at MGIEP in the Ethics of AIED project is studying how AI is threat and what to do about it. So my talk would be around AI is threat and what are the ethical concepts within AI in education. So I will be saying this word AIED several times. So AIED is AI in education. So let's delve deeper into the threat aspect of AI. Using this reflection question, how would you feel if your child's access to quality education is determined solely by availability of some AI system? For some of us, it would be scary. For some of us, it would be very scary. Now let's look at the other question. Can you trust an AI system if they got their intelligence from biased data? Those who are aware of the implications of biased data, it would be very, very scary for them. Right. Now, so here is the state of affairs in AI ED domain. If the quality of education is going to be tied strongly with the quality of AI, which is inevitable, all the threats related to AI are bound to translate to education. So if we are really concerned about education and threats on education, now we have to start talking about what are the risks and ethical questions that surround AI in education now. So what we have been expecting from AI till now, we expected that AI should be able to help us in scaling up these 3 E's. Number one, AI should be able to help us in improving efficiency of educational process. Number two, AI should be able to help us in increasing effectiveness of educational processes. And it should also be able to help us in ensuring equity. What we advocate is that all these 3 E's should be targeted, but under the umbrella of the 4th E, which is ethics. And we advocate ethics of AI in education, ethics of AIED, as an exclusive, it should be treated as an exclusive separate discipline, and we should explore it as a separate discipline. However, it is going to be informed by pre-existing disciplines of education, AI, AIED, and ethics. Now, if someone wants to dig deeper into the nuances of ethics, so counterintuitive to most of the notions that we have about ethics, ethics is not black and white. Ethics is a continuous negotiations between different dimensions, such as context. What is the choice of algorithm in a AI system, which is for education? Which data is being collected? What is the educational approach that is being targeted using a AI system? So to understand those negotiations, we need to understand different intersections of these 3 dimensions, which is computation, data, and education. In our work, we have added a 4th dimension, which is user of AIED. User could be learner, teacher, policymaker. So for example, if we look at the different types of learners, so a learner who is a special learner, to ensure that the performance of the AI system is better, what we can compromise with, we can give more personal data. We can compromise on the dimension of privacy. For other learners, we might not compromise with respect to data privacy, right? So the moment you change users and the type of users of AIED system, the negotiation of ethics starts changing. Similar things happen if you change algorithm types, if you change what type of data you are collecting, and if you change what type of educational approaches you are choosing. So typical principles that we study within ethics of AIED discipline are transparency, which means that how educational decision or feedback or recommendations is achieved, is given, is provided by the system. Other ethical principle is around bias and inclusion. Next is around privacy, data privacy and data protection. And then comes slightly less talked about but important data custodianship, where we talk about who should own the data, whether it should be the private enterprise owning the data, or it should be the learners, or it should be some commons which should own the data. And the last principle we talk about is agency and autonomy. Now, given all these importance of ethics of AI, and we should treat ethics of AI as a AIED as a separate discipline. Now, how to harness AI in education, given the importance of ethics? So short-term recommendation, short-term solution is, obviously we should talk about creating guidelines for ethics and giving the guidelines to the practitioners, to the learners, policymakers, so on. But the long-term sustainable solution has to be inculcating ethical competencies among different stakeholders. So harnessing AI in education will require preparing the whole educational system for it. It requires policy making, regulations, etc. It will also require developing competencies among teachers, competencies on ethics of AI, ED competencies, and also developing ethics of AI, ED competencies among the learners. So this was the message from my end. Thank you. And one important announcement here is that we are completing a report on ethics of learner-centric AIED, which we should be launching in May 2024. So stay tuned, and once again, thank you very much for having me here. And my name is Shitanshu, and we are very much open and happy to collaborate and to have partnerships. Thank you.
Dear Shitanshu, thank you so much for your very bright presentation, interesting insights and suggestions related to ethical considerations of AI mostly. Thank you for sharing with us your experience and the experience of Mahatma Gandhi Institute. And we also hope to continue some collaboration and joint activities with you. Thank you. Thank you so much. And let me ask our keynote speakers if you have any interesting links to standards, recommendations, guidelines, or whatever, please kindly share it with our participants through our chat. We have a chat box here. Please put the links to interesting resources if you have something. And now, this is my great pleasure to invite our next keynote speaker, who is Dr. Elizabeth Laird. She is a director of equity in civic technology of the Center for Democracy and Technology. Elizabeth, the screen is yours.
Great, thank you. One small correction, you give me too much credit. I'm not actually a doctorate. I do have 2 master's degrees, which maybe add up to being a doctor. We'll have to see if that's ethical. But nonetheless, I'm very excited to be with you all today. I am gonna zoom out a little bit, and I will touch on the ethics of AI, but I think part of what I hope to share is how data and technology have been used in schools for a very long time. And there are important ethical questions that non-AI based technology also present. so that the enthusiasm behind AI doesn't overshadow some of the fundamental and core questions about how we use data and technology in service of students and teachers and their families. So I work at the Center for Democracy and Technology, which is an organization based in the US, although we do also have an office in Brussels. And our goal as an organization is to support really good uses of data and technology, but also be just as obsessed with and focused on the ways that it can go wrong. Wrong meaning it can violate someone's privacy, it can be used to discriminate against them, and so that's what I'll focus on today. So what I wanted to start with is just to give a couple of examples, and so these are headlines from a publication in the US called Education Week that covers all education issues related to K-12 and higher education here, but also around the world. And you'll see on the left is a headline about how early warning information, so looking at signs that may indicate that a student is off track, could have been used during the pandemic to support students and figure out who needs the most help and then provide them that help. On the right, you see actually a very similar system in that it is looking at leading information and leading indicators, but instead of that information being used to provide resources and help, that same technology is being used to identify who might commit a crime in the future. And so my point of this slide is that this isn't really a question of technology. This is a question of how do we use technology responsibly? And that's really what, in my opinion, data ethics is about. And so when I think about data ethics and how you approach these questions, first of all, they're very complicated and very tricky because they are largely subjective. But when I think about the ethical use of data and technology in the context of schools, I think of it like a two-sided coin. On one side of the coin, in order to use this technology ethically and responsibly, you need to make sure that the benefits of that technology are available to everyone. And so someone earlier mentioned focusing on the digital divide and making sure that everyone can be connected. That's an example of ethical technology use, and that type of connectivity can and should be available to everyone. So that's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is making sure that the uses of data and technology don't disproportionately harm certain communities. And unfortunately, it is often true that if that harm does fall to a community, that community, this is not the first time that they have been harmed by systemic policies or really a number of things. It tends to be communities that have historically experienced discrimination and other issues. And so that can include individuals with disabilities. The gender gap was mentioned earlier. In the US and around the world, race is a big issue too. So when you think about using data and technology responsibly, it helps me to think about those two things. And if you have those two things in place, you're on the way to using data and technology responsibly in schools. I guess I want to make my pitch as to why using data and technology ethically and responsibly is important. And we're a select group. You have chosen to participate in this webinar, so I may be preaching to the choir a bit, but just to say out loud why this matters. In terms of the benefits, it's really important to have this type of framework because the options for how you use data technology, especially as my previous panelists talked about, are really becoming more and more available. And so having a lens through which you can decide when technology is appropriate and for whom is really important. It's also a really important tool to be able to explain to the public why this matters and how you're able to take care of their children when they're in your care in schools. So it's an important tool to support trust. If you don't address data ethics and make sure that you're using this technology responsibly, you're at risk of losing public trust because they don't believe you that you're going to use this in a way that serves their children and their family, which then results in a backlash. And I've experienced this firsthand in the US when I worked in government. And then you lose funding for technology. They take your access to information away. And so this is a really important concept, and it's in the interest of school leaders and policymakers to address this. And if you don't, you're at risk of actually undermining the efforts that you have to use data technology responsibly. So I'm just going to give a brief case study of a type of technology that is used in the US, but also around the world, called student activity monitoring. And this is a technology that is oftentimes driven by AI, and it is used to look at what students are doing online and track their online activities. So it can scan their messages, it can look at the websites they visited. Sometimes it can even enable real-time access to what a student is looking at on their own device. And I'm going to share some research with you about what this rollout has looked like here, hoping that some of these lessons can be extended to your communities as well. But this is a type of technology that became very popular in the wake of the pandemic when the classroom moved from the school building to the home. And so now, at least in the US, this technology is almost ubiquitous. 88% of teachers say that their school uses this technology. And 40% of teachers in the US say that this technology is used on students' personal devices. So not just the devices meaning laptops or tablets that are provided by the school, but also on their personal computer, their personal cell phone. And this technology has been marketed as being an important tool to keep students safe, oftentimes meaning keep them safe from harming themselves or harming someone else. But in reality, we find that the way that this technology is used is actually inconsistent with that. And unfortunately, it is more common for this technology to be used to discipline students. And 2/3 of teachers say that they know someone who's been disciplined because of this technology, either because of what the technology identifies or the way in which students are confronted with what this technology shows. And not to be so negative, I did want to share something to think about that could be an important tool that has already come up by my panelists about what can be done to encourage the responsible use of all data and technology, but especially when you're thinking about deploying this type of technology that goes far beyond what's happening in the classroom, and it can extend to students' devices and what they're doing in their home. It's really important to engage communities, to, as previously mentioned, be transparent about the ways that you're using data and technology, including but not limited to AI, and get their input. So you'll see here, we asked parents and students, do you think it's important for schools to ask your input and your opinion on the ways that we're using data and technology? And the answer was resoundingly yes. 95% of parents said that they think it's important that their school ask them about the ways that they're using data and technology. And one bright spot in our research is that we found that a parent of a student with a disability or a student with a disability themselves are more likely to be asked for their input on data and technology. So when you're thinking about in your schools, are there places that you can start? There may be places where this is already happening and can be extended to apply to other groups of students in your schools. And if you're thinking about community engagement, some things to think about are, one, prioritizing the engagement of all stakeholders. Sometimes the people who are most vocal and volunteer to give their opinions aren't actually representative of the community at large. The second thing to think about is that community engagement is not a one-size-fits-all. You have to think about how to create the environment and the conditions that are needed to have constructive and effective engagement. It's nothing that will ever be checked off your list. You'll never say, I engage communities and now I'm done. And then the final thing I'll say specific to community engagement is that this is something that's been happening in schools for a very long time. It's not new. And so to think about where is this engagement already happening that might be working well, and build on those practices to incorporate the way that schools are using data and technology. Throughout my presentation, I included some resources and citations if you want to learn more, because we have a very short period of time. That is the end of my remarks for today, but I'm happy to engage further. There's a ton of resources on our website. which is just cdt.org. And I'll close by just thanking the Institute for hosting this important conversation today.
Dear Elizabeth, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your presentation and sharing with us your experience. And, you know, especially it was very interesting to learn about your current studies and including student activity monitoring and engaging communities on data use practices. Thank you for sharing your experience and resources. I can see that my colleague Elizaveta is also putting some links into the chat box from your presentation. Thank you so much. And we need to move forward. And we have one more, I would say the last keynote speaker, but not the least. It's my great pleasure to invite Mr. Patrick O'Hare, who is a Director of Studies of Europass Teacher Academy. Patrick, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Natalie, for the invitation, and Lisa. Also, thanks to my fellow panelists for their insightful presentations. I'm going to share my screen and hopefully it works okay. Can you see that? Let me press.
Yeah, yes, full screen, please.
Oh, yeah. There we go.
Thank you.
Great. So I am the head of trainers at the Europass Teacher Academy in Dublin, and I'll be exploring some ethical dimensions to digital competence in teacher training. So I'll be looking at the teacher perspective quite a bit. One dilemma is data privacy versus personalized learning. AI can use student data like engagement metrics, learning styles, performance history to customize education. It can dynamically adjust the content and difficulty, offer tailored feedback, and also predict the needs and ultimately enhance individual learning paths. Now, there's a delicate balance to be struck between personalized learning and student data privacy. How do we customize the learning experience for each student while simultaneously safeguarding their private information? Well, teacher training now goes beyond just the basics of tech use. It's about understanding the ethics of data management. And personalized learning with AI, it aims to make education more accessible and tailored to individual needs. This approach, however, depends on handling sensitive information with care. Therefore, teacher training programs must tackle how to offer personalized learning without compromising student privacy. So the goal is to find a balance that encourages personal development and maintains data protection. So how do we find the balance? Well, here's some best practices to balance personalized learning with data privacy. Firstly, establish transparency standards. Create clear policies that outline what student data is collected, how it is used, and who can access it. Make these policies easily accessible to students, educators, and parents. Then implement consent protocols. So develop a system for obtaining informed consent from students or their guardians before collecting data, and ensure that there's an option to opt out that does not negatively impact the student's learning experience. Adopt data minimization. So collect only the data that is essential for the stated educational objectives. Regularly review data collection practices to ensure that they align with this principle. Also, enforce strong data security measures. Protect student data with security protocols, including encryption, secure storage solutions, and stringent access controls. It's also really important to practice ethical data usage. Use the data in a manner that is fair, unbiased, and respectful of student rights. And avoid using data in ways that could lead to discrimination or inequality. This next one might be obvious, but ensure legal compliance. Stay current with and adhere to all applicable data protection laws and educational regulations, and also prioritize education on data privacy. So we must offer ongoing professional development for educators and staff on data privacy, on ethical data use, and the best practices in digital education. And of course, with the rapidly developing AI, we must review and update policies regularly. So the key here is to find the balance. We don't want to lose the massive benefits we'll gain from personalized learning because we're concerned about data privacy, but we must protect the data security of students at the same time. That's my first ethical dilemma. The next one is algorithmic bias in educational AI. So, for example, a secondary school is using an AI-driven tool that helps teachers to grade essays. And then it becomes apparent that the tool is giving lower scores to essays written in certain dialects of the target language. So this could point to some embedded biases within the AI's algorithm and whether it can fairly assess the diverse students' population's work. People sometimes ask where the bias comes from. Well, it comes from the training data, the design of the algorithm, how the data was collected, historical practices, like what's been the norm, and does the norm actually include bias, and also some maybe implicit bias from developers. When I speak to teachers, their concerns about this revolve around fairness, equity, and inclusion. So the use of AI-driven assessment tools may inadvertently introduce biases that result in unfair evaluations, particularly for students from certain backgrounds, minority backgrounds in particular. There's ethical responsibility. So educational institutions and educators have an ethical responsibility to avoid using AI tools that may perpetuate biases or unfairly disadvantage students. And the biggest concern is mitigating this bias. So educators must be equipped with the knowledge and tools to identify and mitigate bias in AI-driven assessments. This requires training and awareness of the ethical dimensions of technological integration. And the biggest concern would be the impact on student outcomes. So can AI bias impact student outcomes? There's potential for this in multiple settings, not just in assessment, but in areas like college admissions and places like that. So what can we do about it? Well, we can ensure that the data used to train AI systems is diverse and representative of the student population. And this involves collecting data from a wide range of sources, ensuring it includes students from various backgrounds, socioeconomic statuses, and demographics. That's not always possible. It's not always possible to do that. So what we can do is implement regular auditing and oversight of any algorithms we're using in an educational setting. So yeah, it's essential to have mechanisms in place to monitor for bias. The third dilemma is something I hear as a teacher trainer when teachers come for one of our courses on AI. They say AI will replace us as teachers. Sometimes it's said tongue in cheek, and sometimes it's a real fear. And it's an anxiety that we must address. And it raises some key questions that we need to work together to answer. Question one would be, how can AI enhance, not replace, the teacher's role in education? Question two, how can technology be integrated without detracting from the face-to-face interactions? And question three, what strategies can educators adopt to foster meaningful connections with students in a digital learning environment? So we need to work together to answer those questions, because while the quote I hear is there's sometimes a bit of laughter after it's said, there is an underlying anxiety there as well that needs to be addressed. So teachers must leverage the strengths of technology while preserving the significance of human interaction. Embrace AI as a tool to augment, not replace, the teacher's role. Use AI to automate tasks, provide real-time feedback, access resources. This will free up teachers' time to engage in meaningful interactions with the students. We can also prioritize face-to-face interaction, so foster regular classroom discussions, group projects, and one-on-one interactions to build relationships and foster a sense of community and cultivate critical thinking skills. It's also important to incorporate technology seamlessly into blended learning. Create a blended learning environment that seamlessly integrates digital and traditional methods, balancing the benefits of technology with the importance of human connection. So a big focus on human connection is is important in the coming years. We must also promote responsible AI usage, educate students about the ethical implications of AI, encourage them to critically evaluate AI-generated content, and use technology responsibly. And finally, and very importantly, provide ongoing professional development. We must equip teachers with the knowledge and skills to effectively integrate technology, foster meaningful interactions, and create engaging learning experiences. So those three topics were the main things I hear from teachers as they come and do our courses. So I'll leave it there.
Dear Patrick, thank you so much for your presentation, your insights, and I would say some inspiration which we have got from your presentation, especially related to some fears and concerns from teachers, and we need to discuss these questions as much as possible. And in this case, I would like to pay attention of all of our participants today that UNESCO IITE has established a special e-library for teachers. And let me ask Lisa, meanwhile, to send a link to this e-library for teachers. This is a platform which we have created jointly with NetDragon company, and where we will have and already have a big number of resources, open educational resources, training courses. And what is especially important, we also have a education and technology forum for teachers, where we can discuss different aspects, including the questions and challenges related to ethical dimensions of educational technologies in the digital world. So I would like to invite all of our participants to visit our e-library platform and take active part in discussions, because these questions are very increasingly important to be discussed in the future. And let me thank all of our keynote speakers for their very interesting and insightful presentations. I hope that our participants of the webinar have got some impression and even inspiration from all of these presentations. And now we're ready to have a panel discussion with our panelists. Thank you very much. And let me invite my colleague, Ms. Galina Udayadas, for moderating of the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia. Thank you, dear keynote speakers. So, esteemed speakers, distinguished panelists, and valued participants, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the upcoming segment of our webinar, which is the panel discussion. In the session, our panelists, who are experts and researchers in the field, will delve into questions around educational settings. And in this regard, I'm really delighted to introduce our experts. Could you please put them on the slide, Lisa? I think just for, yes, thank you so much. So today we have with us Dr. Wayne Holmes, who is a PhD and associate professor from University College London. We have Professor Wu Di from National Engineering Research Center for E-Learning at the Central China Normal University. We have my colleague from UNESCO IITE, Ms. Yulia Plahutina, who is a program officer for education and health. And we also have Dr. Bolas Shihata, a PhD and a fellow from Smart Learning Institute of Beijing Normal University. So to start the conversation, as we embark on this discussion, so the first initial question I propose for discussion today is, if we're talking about cyberbullying, which is also a very sensitive and important issue, in the context of EdTech, what ethical risks does the rise of cyberbullying pose, and what measures should be taken to foster a safe, inclusive, and supportive digital learning environment for all students? I would maybe invite my colleague Yulia to answer this question and some other participants to provide their comments after that. Julia, are you with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Galina, for your kind introduction. It's a big pleasure for me to be with you. And yeah, right. So as we delve deeper into the discussion of cyberbullying in the context of tech, it's crucial to understand, first of all, the global scale of this issue and its negative outcomes. So cyberbullying is not just local or isolated problem. It's a global concern that affects millions of students around the world. Just to share the most recent data in this regard, so recent global studies indicate that up to 41% of children have experienced cyberbullying at some point, with a significant number reporting recurring incidents. In some countries, in some regions, these numbers are even higher, for instance, in the United States, but this is not necessarily due to technological advancements, as many people used to think. It's rather the matter of well-established reporting and monitoring tools. So again, these are not just a few isolated incidents. And the impact of cyberbullying goes well beyond just the immediate emotional distress. So the key negative outcomes are quite multifaceted and can have long-term effects, including on academic performance and also health issues like anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, and so on and so forth. So just coming back to your question, sorry for this long introduction. What can we do in this regard? So first of all, we can actually try to build on AI to monitor and identify the cases of cyberbullying. And just maybe to highlight one potential risk here is that while applying the tools that identify, for instance, the words which are attributed to cyberbullying cases, for instance, it is very important to take into account freedom of expression. And for instance, UNESCO, this year, UNESCO has started the global research on censorship, which social media platforms practice. So these are kind of two sides of the coin. First of all, trying to identify the risks that students facing online, but on the other side of the coin is the issue of freedom of expression and being the right to speak out on social media platforms and other educational platforms. Then, of course, we should talk about education as a kind of key answer to this question. So regular sessions for students, educators, and parents on the dangers of cyberbullying and the importance of digital citizenship can make a significant difference. And it's important that these kind of programs should aim to create awareness and foster the culture of respect and empathy in general, rather than just focusing on particular kind of risk of cyberbullying. And these linkages between monitoring tools and also support systems are vital. So establishing counseling services and support mechanisms for victims of cyberbullying can provide much needed relief and assistance. And maybe one more thing that I would like to highlight is that the role of parents sometimes are being neglected in this process, though parents might be a big support for young learners in this process. So this kind of awareness programs and education programs of cyberbullying are important not just for children, but also for parents and teachers. And of course, promoting inclusivity is another crucial measure. And here we're talking about gender inclusivity and other kind of inclusivity. I will probably stop here to give the floor to other panel members, but we'll be happy to follow up on any of the questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Julia. I really appreciate your insight, because usually when we talk about the AI, EdTech in general, right, we all the time touch upon the learning outcomes of students, right? So, and very less on the mental health, right? On how they feel when they study, not just what they study, right? What they learn in the educational setting. So it's really great. Thank you for highlighting that very important issue. And of course, it's very important ethical issue as well to consider. And really great to hear that there are some tools already in place to monitor. But yes, it's sad to hear that it's not commonly used everywhere, unfortunately. But it's good that UNESCO in particular and other organizations are working on implementing, developing these tools worldwide to understand the impact of technologies on the mental health and well-being of students. Thank you so much, Julia. And I would just go to the next panel member, and Professor Wu Di. Hello, Professor. So I think that could you please maybe provide the suggestions on what are some less obvious ethical threats associated with the integration of digital learning, AI, and how can educators be informed about them, trained effectively to mitigate these challenges?
Oh, okay. Thanks. I think that's a very good question. And I think maybe in China, we already do several research on this problem. So I think first we should strengthen key technological and standard research, especially we need to establish a framework and publish standards for data security protection and regulate the entire life cycle of educational data, including its collection, processing, application, and management. And this will help prevent algorithm biases caused by training data. When we just provide training courses to teachers, we always need to ask them to just take care about the risk of ethical AI ethical problem. So I think it should be designed as a course inside of the training course systems. So if we want to provide a training project to K-12 teachers, so I think it's a good way. In China, we already publish a standard names the digital literacy standards for educators. So it's already been published as national standards in China. So most K-12 schools educator leaders, if they want to provide training programs to teachers, they always need to think about the digital literacy standards. So I think the ethics, AI ethics problem should be considered as a part of the literacy standards. So I think this is a good way to solve the problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor. It's really nice to hear that China has been actively working on different standards. If it's okay for you, could you please share in the chat the link? I think if it's in English, or is it in Chinese?
Okay, I can send the name of the standards in the chat area. The standards name is digital literacy of
Sure, yes. Please send it to us. I think it will be
teachers.
also very okay.
I already sent it in the chat area. It's a standard. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, if you could share maybe the document, I think it will be also very nice to go
Okay,
through
I
it.
will send the document to you. No problem.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just one more topic before we start to the open discussion as well, and we have so many questions in the Q&A session. Just one more question about the generative AI to our Dr. Bolas Shihata, because he's also a very big expert on this matter. So how can we ensure the effective implementation of generative AI platforms to contribute to learning strategies, making them more student-centered, and at the same time maintaining ethical considerations?
Hi, can you hear me?
Hello, Bolas. Yes, we can hear and see you.
All right. Okay, thank you. First, thanks for this webinar and for this panel discussion. It's always inspiring what UNESCO IITE is doing, and Actually, for this question and for the general topic of the ethical consideration when we're talking about generative AI, there are so many things to consider. I'm going to be talking about the issue of student-centered learning because that's my research interest and area. Actually, I'd like to refer to our institute's publication last year, which gained a lot of citation, over 500 citations so far, regarding the use of chatbots. We actually conducted an experience, like a research based on user experience, and we highlight several issues. For example, the idea of cheating and getting away with it. So some students can use generative AI and they develop the skills of getting away of being detected. So by changing very small things within the text. This is from the user experience. Another scenario was related to the accuracy of the provided learning content when we're using a chatbot such as I'm referring to ChatGPT here, because that was the tool that we used. Another scenario was the fairness of the provided learning content. So if 5 students use the same prompt, but they receive completely different presentation of the data, is this fair? And how can we ensure the fairness when we're talking about student-centered learning? And other scenarios include appropriateness and the appropriateness of the created learning assessment. So if I ask the ChatGPT to create, as a teacher, to create some questions for the student, but it provides some very silly answers. Like, I think you can refer to the paper. We provide some funny examples as well. So what I want to say here, there are several discussion points that we raise in our paper that's really about embracing the technology rather than banning it. So like I went to some schools that are have completely banned ChatGPT instead of proposing some kind of guidelines of using it. So I've seen other schools that provide guidelines of using generative AI in general and ChatGPT in specific. There is also a need for considering the teaching philosophy, a new teaching philosophy. So if we're already talking about the difference between teacher-centered learning and student-centered learning, now we need to also include generative AI as a tool of empowering students, and this requires a paradigm shift in the teaching philosophy. There are so many discussion points. I don't want to take too much of the time from other panelists, but perhaps I can share this paper and our webinar chat box here, and looking forward to hear more comments from other panelists. Thank you so much, Galina. Back to you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Dr. Shihata, for your points that you have just provided to us. Yes, please share the publication that you were talking, or some experiment, as you said. If there is any information which could be useful, please share it with us in the chat box. Dear participants, dear speakers, now I invite everyone for the open discussion, as we have some also questions from our audience that has been pending, to be answered for quite some time. And I would say that one of the very important question that I think I would say 2 times already repeatedly happened in our chat box is about the biggest benefits and the biggest challenges of AI in education. And another question is also about just a moment, I'm sorry. yeah, about what is the biggest pro and biggest cons, I would say, of using AI in classroom. So please go ahead if anyone would like to answer this question from your experience and research. What would you say, maybe one benefit and one threat or one challenge? Like Patrick, maybe I can see you're hearing us. Maybe you could provide just some from your experience working with teachers.
Yes, from my experience working with teachers, I can speak to their concerns, and a major concern is, students will forget how to be creative. Students won't go through challenges, won't figure things out step by step. They'll go straight to the final answer, and they're missing out on a key skill there. They're missing out on developing their creativity, their individuality, their critical thinking, and the teachers fear they're outsourcing their own work to AI. The students will outsource their own independent processes to AI. That's the biggest concern, and that's where the teacher comes in guiding the students in how to use AI, how to analyze it, and how to use it to guide students to find out their own answers. This can be done either through guiding students on how to use AI, or having a particular AI that's coded to not give answers, but rather to provide to elicit responses from the students instead, to act as a mentor rather than just a generative AI model. So I'd say the solution is either have the AI be a mentor that elicits answers, or have the teacher teach the students about critical thinking and using AI as a tool, not a replacement for your own independent thought and creativity.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Cecilia. Yeah, are you?
Yes,
Like
please. Please. Thank you. I think to my vision, I think that the biggest benefit is to enable people to rethink practices in learning and rethink the concept of intelligence and learning. I think since the origin of AI, this was the main goal, to understand more about the human being in terms of his intelligence and the way we learn. So I think one of the biggest benefit is this one. In terms of the challenge, I see the threat in equity. Equity, I think it's very, very at risk, because especially because of the idea of the personalized teaching, because you are having data from the students and you are delivering different responses for each student. And I think it is very easy to have a bias in this process. So those are the for me the main issues regarding AI in education. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. Yes, it's really important issues and important profit from the using of AI. I see other colleagues also turn their camera on. I'm sure they're ready to step in the conversation. Please feel free.
Well, I will jump in. And I wanted to just share some research. So I focused in my presentation largely on student activity monitoring, which is an AI-powered tool. A lot of the questions in the chat were specifically about generative AI, so I wanted to just briefly share what we heard from teachers, because that's the main group who we surveyed when it comes to their concerns. So just building on what Patrick talked about. One thing I wanted to just share that our research shows, and this is, again, is just based on students in the US, but there was a pretty big gap between what teachers thought students were doing with generative AI and what they're actually doing. So teachers were quite distrustful of students using generative AI to pass the work generated by generative AI off as their own, so the question of cheating, when it was actually far less common when we asked students, and it was anonymous, they had no reason to misrepresent what they were doing. So I would really push teachers to be open to the fact that students may not actually be using these tools to cheat, or at least not at the same degree that they may be thinking they are. And in fact, it was more common for students to report that they use these tools for personal uses, which leads to my second concern that I would just offer that is an issue now, will be for at least the foreseeable future, which is that generative AI can be wrong. It can just make stuff up. And so one thing that I would be thinking about as a teacher is in an environment where your whole goal is to teach students what is right and what is true, making sure that the tool is appropriate for that. And one funny example is one of my colleagues' brothers is a professor, and he got an essay talking about the Electoral College, which in the US is how we elect someone. But he was talking about it as if it was an actual school. So I would just call out that these technologies do have limitations and oftentimes are just flat out wrong. And so if you're using them for high stakes purposes, like we learned, students were going to it and asking for mental health advice or feeling depressed, or how do I talk to my parents? It's called hallucinations, but these tools can just make things up. So I would be thoughtful about that too, about using this tool in an educational setting.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Yes, thank you. It's very nice that you said about what actually teachers thought, right? Why students use AI and what actually is the situation. So sometimes we just guess, but it should be proper research and monitoring, etc., done to understand the real situation. Thank you so much. Other colleagues, any other comments, suggestions?
Yeah, I would be happy to jump in here and to continue on what just Elizabeth brought to the table. So if we talk about education in sexuality or mental health education or education in social-emotional area, so AI might be a really powerful tool. Just picture, I don't know, a young girl and as many others in her age, she's starting to experience, I don't know, the complexities of growing up, grappling with changes, both physical and emotional, new kind of relationships, I don't know, new feelings, new emotions. And in some contexts, in some countries, in some regions, discussion of those kind of topics might be taboo or at least quite sensitive. And in this case, AI might potentially be the tool which provides a safe space where young person can learn about sensitive topics without judgmental attitudes and, in a safe environment. But at the same time, there is quite a few ethical concerns. And of course, I'm not talking here about data security and so on and so forth, which has been covered by other colleagues, but I would like to bring another challenge, which is emotional attachment to AI. So there are some observations in this area which speak about that once AI is being used for social emotional learning, it might be useful in a way, and it provides some guidance and support. But at the same time, what we might observe here is that a person might be emotionally attached to AI and consider talking to AI and getting support from AI as an easier way than to communicate with peers or professionals. So this is something that we should keep in mind while developing some different tools for mental health, counseling, sexuality education. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Yulia. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe I can come in with from the point of view of AIED research. So I'm not talking about generative AI. So AI has a lot of different categories. So when you look at AIED research, one of the most, what fascinates me is the capacity of analyzing different modalities of data and very fine-grained data, which enables AI systems to generate personalized scaffolds, personalized support. So that's one of the biggest possibilities that AI is now giving us. As far as the setback and the challenge, so I'm also talking about a challenge of equity, but even I'm talking more basic problem for now, maybe not after 20 years or 15 years or maybe 10 years. But for now, one of the basic problem is access. So as I said, right, if the quality of education and quality of AI is highly related with each other, then if someone does not have access to internet or does not have access to AI, and if good AI products are costly, right? So there are a lot of reasons where access can be denied to majority of populations. So as of now, this access is a big problem, and more and more AI is developing, but on the other front, the access is not getting bridged. So this difference between the populations are now growing. So differences are growing, access is not getting bridged, and AI is running exponentially, growing exponentially. So that's a challenge, at least for majority of it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shitanshu, for your comments. Indeed, access is a very big issue in so many countries, and we have really look into that matter. Colleagues, any other comments, or maybe we could go to the next question.
I think Dr. Woody has also his remarks, please.
Okay.
Thank you. I just one second. I also agree that access is a big problem, so we should provide the chance to rural areas, especially for little children. So provide a guidance, access, chance for them. And also, I think we should provide guidance for different types of schools. For example, for K-12 schools, which we can provide a special guidance, but also we need a special guidance for university students because they are in a different age. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you. Okay. Do we have any hands? I'm sorry, I was not able to see your hand. Okay, I think no. I think we just have maybe a few minutes to discuss one more question from the chat box. We have so many questions actually, and they're very amazing. And we have so many teachers and educators and participants from different countries. We have participants from Africa, I see from Mauritius, from Finland. So it's really great to see so many different countries. And I would say that there is one, maybe not a question, more like a statement about the students with disabilities and the students with visual impairments and hearing and speaking impairments, including the teachers, right? Because sometimes teachers also could have some disabilities. So what would be, I think that the question is, what do you think about the situation around this inclusion of students with disabilities, how the technologies can help them to participate more actively and effectively in learning, to learn better. I think that inclusion is a very crucial topic that we could also discuss in regards to AI and digital technologies in general. Would anyone like to provide some comments on that?
And maybe just to correlate more with the topic of our webinar, just what would be the ethical aspects again in the use of technology for maybe teachers who are working with students with disabilities, because there are also many aspects, and if you have anything to say about that, that would be very appreciated.
I can start by just sharing some research. Oh, Cecilia, I'm so sorry I cut in line. I will make it fast.
No problem. No problem. You go first.
Thank you.
So one thing I would think it's important to know, and this comes back to the question of equity and potential, is that students with disabilities and the teachers that work with them, according to our research, are more likely to use this technology. And you could imagine, all of the work that's been done around accessibility and the different ways that technology can help individuals with disability. It doesn't seem surprising. But to bring it back to the topic and thinking about ethics, I would be very careful about what kind of consequences you attach to the use of some kinds of these technologies, and make sure that, because this group of students and their teachers might be more likely to use technology, you don't want them to also be more likely to get in trouble. And so, to use the generative AI example, if you're attaching punitive consequences to using this technology and students with disabilities are more likely to use it, you are going to disproportionately discipline them. So I would be careful about attaching negative consequences to the use of this technology, and that it could actually harm a community that arguably has the most to gain from this type of tech.
Okay.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
I think that talking about students with disabilities, including teachers, we have already, if you are talking about AI in a web-based environment, I think we have already very good standards for web applications that some way are very good nowadays, I think. But my main concern would be the ubiquitous environments. For instance, when you have IoT systems, or when you have installations that are composing your learning environment with artifacts that have to be touched, for instance, that have to be approached physically by the student with disability. Maybe I think this is a subject that is not well addressed by the academy and by the industry nowadays. So I think we should have a lot of work to do yet regarding those ubiquitous environments when you have to consider the different capacities and disabilities of everyone to have the same opportunities in those environments. That's what I would say now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cecilia, for your comment. I see my colleague Lisa already posted on the chat box the webinar that we had on the inclusion, digital technologies for disability inclusion. So it's also one of very crucial topics that we are focusing on at IIT. So if you have time, please, you can check that webinar, the recording of that webinar.
And also, sorry for jumping in again, and also I'm sharing a course on the eLibrary platform, Introduction to Inclusive Education. We have 2 courses for the use of technology in the inclusive education, and if you're interested in that topic, you can also check those out. Sharing with you the chat box. Thank you. Back to you, Galina.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Yes, we have a lot of resources on many topics, including the AI and including the course for teachers who work with students with disabilities. So please visit the library. You can find a lot of very good and useful resources for your practice. And I think we come almost to the end of our webinar. I would just ask if we have more comments. Maybe I missed anyone. Anyone would like to say some few words? Okay. So we have, yeah. So we still have some questions to answer. Thank you, dear participants, for being very active. And you can see that some of you already provided even some of your ideas and very big messages in the chat. And it's really nice that this topic is really important for so many of you, whoever you are, if you're a teacher, educator, researcher, expert working in the field. It's really great that this topic is really very wide and it can be discussed from so many points. And I'm very glad that today we touched upon not only general, right, AI in education, ICT in education, but also we touched upon how these ethical considerations related to these fields. We talked about also cyberbullying, about mental health, about students, about teacher, about their challenges, how they have to deal with the use of AI on a daily basis, and what are their challenges and problems that they see when they walk in the classroom, and about the training, right? That training is very required. The proper training for teachers is required. And yes, so there are so many issues that we discussed today. And if I see no hands, so I think that everyone had a chance to speak and provide their comments. I would really like to thank you so much for dear speakers, dear panelists, dear audience also, and for my colleagues who helped to organize this event, because it was a really lot of work. So thank you so much for everyone who joined during these busy schedules. And I really hope that we are going to stay in touch with you, and we're going to have more productive discussions, maybe collaborations as well. As we today found out that there's so much work, as Dr. Cecilia said, there's so much work to do, indeed. So I really hope we are going to stay in touch to do the work together with you, with all your amazing experience in so many different aspects related to the use of all sort of technologies in education. Thank you so much, and hope to see you at our next events.
Oh, and back to Natalia. Yeah.
Yes, Natalia.
Yes, thank you so much. Esteemed experts, valued participants, resuming our discussions today on behalf of UNESCO Institute for Information Technologies in Education, I would like to thank all of you for today's webinar. We really appreciate your inputs, shared approaches and suggestions related to the risks and potentials of digital technologies and AI. Focusing on ethical considerations related to digital and online learning, artificial intelligence in education, digital access and digital divide, inclusion, and responsible use of technologies in teacher training, this webinar, I think, can serve as a kind of proactive step forward, fostering a culture of responsibility and ethical confusions in the integration of technologies within educational practices. And I also would like to thank all of our participants for this unique spirit of collaboration during our webinar, when all of our experts are ready to share their experience, their solutions, openly discuss challenges and the ways of bringing the digital divide with following ethical considerations. I also would like to thank IITE team who worked hardly on preparation of this webinar. So let me wish you to stay safe and stay connected. Thank you, dear participants.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you for hosting.
Pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you and bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a nice day, evening, night, wherever you are.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.